Hi, welcome to Fascinated by Fungi Live. Today I'm going to be speaking to Mandie Quark, a trained biochemist and avid mycophile. We're going to get into some of our favorite things about science, what our motivations were, talk a little bit about natural products and some of the sort of bioactive compounds that are in mushrooms. I think that'll be pretty interesting. And more importantly, Mandie's on the East Coast, and I wasn't able to go home this year because of COVID, so I'm going to try to live somewhat vicariously through her foraging experiences and ask her lots of questions about the East Coast mushroom season, especially now that we're sort of transitioning from the summer season into the fall season. So I think that'll be pretty interesting, and I'm just really excited to meet Mandie. And again, my motivation for doing these things isn't, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just excited to talk to people. I'm just really looking forward to the chance to learn from other people in the mycology community, hear their voices, and ideally give them a platform to express themselves. So I'm really excited that you guys are here with me. I'm going to get Mandie on the... Be ready for it. She's coming. I've added her. Connecting. Hello, there you
Hey,
are. Hi.
hey.
How you doing? You may want to orient your phone so that you are... There we go.
Hold on.
Oh, now you're upside
Let
down.
me.
That's fine.
Okay.
There you are. Hi.
Figured it out.
Sweet. How you doing?
Great. Can you hear me?
I can. You sound great. Yes. So
Awesome.
you told me earlier that you guys were out in the woods today, but you dealt with a little bit of a rainstorm. Has the
Yeah.
rain let up, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I'm sitting outside because the other two people that I was with are taking naps right now. So I'm sitting outside. It's pretty nice. It's still a little overcast, but it's wet. And I'm just so happy because it didn't rain for like 2 weeks. So this was our big
Nice.
intro to fall. You know what? It's still very warm though. It's got to be
Mm.
like 83 or something out here right now.
Hmm. So
So
you're not expecting to see Maitake yet because it's a little too warm still.
definitely not. I haven't even, like in my home state of Maryland, we monitor what's going on up there because Michael has all these spots that
Mm.
are, oh man, I made a Google Maps, I don't know what you would call it. Like I entered all the coordinates for all his Maitake spots into Google
Mm.
Maps. So we have that now.
Nice.
And
You just spent a day like driving between the spots, checking them all.
it he had no, he always saved the coordinates of everywhere he would go over years and years. And then I was like, why don't we put these actually in the
Mm.
computer so they
Okay.
can be useful? Yeah, so I spent last year doing that. So one or the other of us or both, but probably at separate times, are going to go up to Maryland for my Taki season. But I've only been seeing them in like Wisconsin, New York State. I haven't been seeing them in Maryland at all. So they're
Hmm.
definitely not down here yet.
Mm.
We're probably weeks out, maybe a month out, because it's
Hmm.
still like mid 80s every day down here in North Carolina. So I'm in North Carolina, by the way, if no one knows where I'm coming from. I'm in the far southwesternmost tip, which is it's a little area called Murphy, North Carolina. And we're about 20 minutes from Tennessee, 20 minutes from Georgia. And yeah, we're right here, life on the edge at in the southern, we're almost the foothills. So once you get into Georgia, it's like the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains.
Okay.
But where we are, it's still kicking it in Blue Ridge, baby. So yeah,
It's
this is still considered the
interesting.
Blue Ridge.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned like seeing the accounts in like Wisconsin or New York, finding maitake and knowing you're like, okay, on this gradient of temperature kind of thing, I can expect it'll be like a month or two. Because I do a similar thing when I look at the people in like Washington and Oregon, and I say,
Gotcha.
okay, it's or even Humboldt, that's like 5, 6 hours north, and I'm like, okay, they're finding stuff. It's going to be another couple of weeks until the temperature, the fog, and the moisture comes down. And then I think people in SoCal do a similar thing with me because in Napa, my
Yep.
habitat is sort of this interior valley, live oak scrub kind of thing. And people in LA have very similar habitat, but they can look at me and say, okay, Gordon's like, 9 hours ahead of me or 9 hours north of me kind of thing. So they can know within like a month or two after what I'm finding stuff, they'll start seeing things. So it's always interesting to have that kind of gradient. And that's one of those things I love about social media, because you can use your friends and the people you follow as phenology reports,
That
Cool.
is, you have said one of the big truths and also secrets of the mushroom hunter is having a bunch of friends and knowing where they live. Yeah, I haven't even seen like my friend like Tug or
Tug's
William
good.
or
I love
any
following them.
yeah, Tug. He was my first friend in the mushroom community. But so he's in kind of square, and then William, who you talked to last week, he's in like the middle of PA. I haven't seen anything from them yet either. So it's not even in Pennsylvania yet. So we're still a couple weeks out, but it's good because you have to prepare. You have to get your dryers out, get your huge baskets ready. I go to the thrift store every year, and then by the end of my Taki season, they're like just destroyed, all the baskets. So I'll go to the thrift store in the beginning of the season, and then the end of the season, I'm like, all this wicker is wet with my Taki and like disgusting, and also falling apart from 40-pound hens in there.
That'll do it.
So,
That'll do it.
yep.
So I wanted to talk to you because I really like talking to scientists, and I know, because you've sort of mentioned your science background, and I've, kind of watched you for years and been fascinated. Do you want to give everybody a little background, kind of the elevator pitch version of what you did in your undergrad and going into your master's?
Yeah, so I went to just a little tiny liberal arts college to get my bachelor's degree. They're known for science. It's called St. Mary's College in Southern Maryland, because I grew up in northeastern Maryland. So it's only about a 2-hour drive to get there from where I grew up, but it's a total world of difference because it's on the eastern shore. Well, it's not. It's Southern Maryland, so it's not the eastern shore, but it's on the shore by the bay, and it just was the cutest little school ever, and it was hard to get into, so I had to wait. My first year, I just went to community college because I couldn't get accepted my first year, but then the second year they're like, oh yeah, you really want to go here, we're going to accept you. So in that school, biology was like the weed out class. So like I got a fucking D, the worst grade of my life in biology. I got a D because
But look at you now. Clearly, that
they
didn't hold you back.
they really weeded me out. So I got a chemistry major instead,
Oh,
which
interesting.
is
Okay.
what I wanted to do that pretty much anyway. So it wasn't that big of a deal. So I was a chemistry major at St. Mary's for my undergrad, and then I left there and went to the most different place you could possibly think of, Philadelphia, to get my graduate degree, my master's in biochemistry. So I was originally, the reason I picked the school, the University of the Sciences in Philly, in West Philadelphia, actually. So the reason I picked that was, sorry, there's bugs out here. I told you I'm sitting outside. I picked the University of the Sciences because I wanted to get my degree in pharmacognosy, which is the study of natural products natural product medicine. So it's medicines from natural sources. For instance, a sea sponge, a fungus, and anything naturally derived. So I was already in on this, like, oh, I want to go to the rainforest and be a bioprospector and do all this really cool stuff. Which it's working out every day here in this rainforest, but I haven't made it to the actual tropical rainforest
Yeah, I had a
quite
chem
yet.
professor in undergrad who would go to Papua New Guinea every year and dive to
So
like
cool.
specifically like 70 feet off this one south side of an island because there was a sponge there that they'd, isolated some sort of, it wasn't Taxol, but it was a similar sort of potential cancer drug. And he did that every year. And I was like, oh my God, I want to live your life.
Right.
Especially because he ran a winery and other stuff too. He was a cool guy. But yeah,
So
that's
because
the
that's
dream. You want to do that bioprospecting and it doesn't always work out.
No, it
No,
doesn't, but I mean, there's still time.
there
But
is.
it's just so expensive to do all the extractions of everything and test everything. And I know that because the job that I ended up getting. So when I was going to the University of the Sciences, I was working. I wasn't the person that was poor in grad school. I was the person that took a long time to finish grad school because I
I
was
know all
working
about
at the
that.
same time. Yeah, so I worked in a research lab at in just outside of Philly, and we did drug discovery research, but nothing natural products, nothing,
Mm.
because that's not where the money is. It's all in the synthetic products.
Yes, yeah. If it comes from a natural source, it means that anybody can access it potentially. So synthetic drugs have more value to these big companies because they can control and patent the process, which is hard to do with a natural product. So,
Right. And they have these huge libraries of just like compounds with different structures that chemists have made. And that's what I would do. I did high throughput screening.
mm,
So I would take an assay for like just a biochemical assay, not even a cellular assay or
mm,
anything like complicated. It was just a very straightforward, different biochemical assays. So one of them was for neurodegenerative disease model, and one of them was for diabetes
mm.
complications. So I tried for years and years and years screening these huge, like 300,000 member uh,
Small molecule libraries.
small molecule
Yeah.
libraries that were all synthetic, is what I was trying to say. Yeah,
Was
so
it
they're,
all like robots and plates or
yeah,
small format kind of things? Yeah.
yep. So I would have to, make a big vat of juice basically, and then like put it on the robot, and it would like suck it up and add it on top of like these dots that I had already made
Mm,
of
okay.
compounds in DMSO basically.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so then, you'd pray that they would mix together and then incubate and then read by a different method. Like this, it would be like a light output assay with like fluorescence or what absorbance or
Hmm.
whatever you were reading. So we just tried so long and hard to find something. And we just were never successful. And this was like a decade that I was working there. So I worked there,
Oh man.
I was hired in 2009, and then I quit in like the middle of 2018 to go on a road trip and like do like
Do mushroom stuff,
whatever, find
basically.
myself. No,
Yeah.
I didn't do
Oh,
mushrooms.
you did know.
I
Okay.
didn't
No, I
do
didn't say do
mushrooms.
mushrooms. You went to
Oh,
find mushrooms and
yeah. I went to
find
find
yourself.
myself. Yeah.
Yes.
So I went all over the place. But getting back to like what I went to school for. So I went for pharmacognosy. Um, Meanwhile, I was like doing the opposite of pharmacognosy because I was doing synthetics. Um, but then in my last, like almost my last semester, like my last year, because it took me 5 years to get this because I was only going at night and I was working.
Mm,
So
that's
in my
rough.
last year, I was like, I realized that I could graduate a semester early and have to take one last class if I just switched from pharmacognosy to biochemistry.
Okay.
So I did that.
That's fair.
Yeah, it saved me like $7,000 or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
so I was like, yes. So I have my degree in biochemistry, but it's all kind of meaningless. I
It's
mean,
all,
it's
well,
not. It's just a piece of paper, right?
it is. I
Like,
mean, what I got out of grad school was what I worked on was some very specific stuff with like yeast and fermentation and a lot of wine background, sort of coupled with some of my molecular genetics and other things I was doing. But coming out of school, it's like, well, I gained knowledge in a very, very discrete, sort of specific area, but it's not that helpful, and it didn't really help me
right.
get a job, and it didn't really lead to any big process. I had grand illusions it would lead to things, and it didn't,
Yep.
which was another good life lesson. But what I realized after coming out of school was that I had gained the ability to learn. And at least what I'd gotten out of school was that capacity to absorb information, to process things, to look critically at publications and stuff like that. And that for me,
That's
that was
true.
was great. And so, I mean, it is just a useless piece of paper, but it also means that you've jumped through a certain number of hoops, which I think hopefully you can tell yourself that matters, because now you are a capable learner and scientist and critical thinker and all those things. So
I mean, it was crazy how quick the illusion was shattered. It was literally the day that I turned in my thesis and was graduating. I was like, I am, I'm not, I don't feel any different. I don't feel
hmm
like I have this degree and like there's nothing different from me like today to yesterday. So I was like, all right, I want to do something where I'm in creative control, which I am just still trying to grip onto that with all my might, because that drug discovery job was like the most boring robotic job
yeah,
ever that you could
you're like, I
ever
could
imagine.
literally be a robot right now. And I mean, it's a shame too that after that all that time of searching, it's not like you came away with some great story either. And that's honestly, that's
Yeah,
typical for most drug discovery and small molecule screens. Is you look at libraries with thousands upon thousands of compounds, and
yeah.
most of the time you get ambiguous hits at best, and don't necessarily have anything to show for it at the end of this long work, which is part of why people avoid trying to, in an academic setting at least, they're like, I don't want to do a small molecule screen because there's a high chance I'll just get nothing
Yeah.
and waste like an entire graduate's career kind of thing doing something like that. So,
Right, but then it's funny because they would do like, oh, like don't waste your money, do a virtual screen. So just take
mm,
your pocket of your
your
enzyme or
binding
whatever you're
pocket and the
looking at.
thing, and see if
Yeah,
it
yeah.
models to fit in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so funny. We would do a virtual screen and they'd be like, oh yeah, we're gonna save like all this money by doing that. And then all the hits, we would actually test those hits in the actual assay and none of them were ever hits. It was like, wow, theory and practice are so different.
Yeah, yeah. And when you got to go back to the company and be like, yo, your algorithm like needs a little bit of work there, bud.
Yeah, and it's like they still paid, yeah, a company to do that for them. So I realize how absolutely crazy these like just any any sort of like pharma related research lab is, and I really don't want to go back to working for some like a something like that. So I'm just struggling for kind of for dear life to like hold on to something that's creative, and Instagram has allowed me to really like do that in a big way, but now I'm more looking for like I want to get more opportunities in this realm and field because
Yeah.
I do work part-time for Michael's company, but I just still want to like keep pushing it. So I told you that I got a GoPro
Yeah.
um
Yeah. You're gonna try to film some
yesterday.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so
That's
I'm gonna
awesome.
start filming, and just like overwhelming a majority of people always ask me about filming, or they're like, "Why don't you write a book? Why don't you film something? Why don't you do something so we can like pay you basically?" And it's just a great point. It's a great idea. I don't really have any like anything right now out there for sale or like any classes or anything like that, and it's really because I've just been so busy working for Michael and like just trying to keep financially afloat in order to be able to like keep this space in my life for the creativity and like all the creative things. So I
Yeah.
just got a recent opportunity where so I do work on the Upwork platform. If anyone ever wanted to hire me to do scientific writing or editing, I am available for hire on this platform called Upwork. And then I was contacted by this company that has an Upwork account, and they said they want to pay me through Upwork to shoot mushroom videos. It's an AI company. So they're like, yeah, yeah, you can do that, right? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. When that gives you that creativity, gives you a little of that control. So
Yeah,
I'm definitely sort of in a similar space where I'm trying to figure out like I'm transitioning between like real life work and like how do I do mushroom stuff? How do I like make more room in my life for pursuing this kind of stuff? Um,
right.
but I mean, in thinking all of that, it brings me back to wondering about kind of crystallizing mushroom experiences, right? Because you have a long history of working in science, of working with a company and fairly high level, drug discovery stuff and analytical
Hmm.
chemistry and all of that. But what drew you to the woods? I mean, because people always ask me, how did you get into mushrooms? I'm like, that's a long answer with too many inputs. But like almost every mushroom person I've met has like a crystallizing experience, whether it was eating something or finding something. But like, do you have that moment where you kind of like suddenly like, oh my gosh, my eyes are open to this in a way they'd never been open before?
Yeah, it was Michael, really. I mean, it was meeting Michael, my partner, Mushroom Life. He, I was like, when we met, first of all, it was 2 months after my brother died, so it was like the worst in time of my life, like worst time of my life. But um, I had just, it was within the last year that I had graduated with my degree. And when I got my biochemistry degree, I did the final project on mushrooms, like lignin degradation. This guy wanted to try to make like a bio reactor of sorts, and he wanted a bunch of research done for which mushrooms degrade lignin. So I was like so theoretical. I knew all this language. Like it was like easy for me to talk to Michael, but like I was like, dude, you're going in the woods and like you're getting like massive pounds of mushrooms. Like I want to do that. I
I
want
want
to
to
do
in.
that. So I was like, I came and I had all this cool theoretical knowledge about mushrooms, but I had zero practical experience. So Michael just like, and then learning from someone that's already an expert, it's like just my learning went in, I don't know, warp speed. Because if I would have been just learning all that on my own, it would have taken so much longer. Just mushroom IDs, mushrooms themselves, like about, you know, there's still stuff that I don't have a good handle on because I never went to school for it. And I like dude, like, this is going to sound ridiculous, but like spores like meeting up. Like I still like have like Michael like understands this whole thing like so much better than me. Like when like spores meet up, like what exactly happens and like how they actually have sex. I I just don't really know about it. Like I just haven't I never that's just one example of one thing that I don't really know as much about it because I had no
Yeah, no formal
formal,
training
yeah.
necessarily.
So
I
like that
Yeah,
the
I'm in
first
a
thing they
similar
would teach
similar
you is
boat.
spores, probably, if there was formal training. But like I'm still like, shoot, I don't
But I
know
think,
about spores.
yeah,
Like,
one of the things that's been helpful for me is I had a degree in sort of yeast biochemistry, and so I understood from like the mating. I can tell you like two spores come together
you
and they
would
form what's
know.
called a little shmoo, which are these little things they kind of link up and they start sharing cytoplasm, and then they combine stuff. So I understood that part, but then when it came to something as simple as like what's a basidiomycete versus an ascomycete, which I
Mm,
really should have known because of my work in yeast, and I dissected yeast tetrads and
right.
stuff like that, but it wasn't information that I'd use because it wasn't like in my head until I suddenly went out hunting for mushrooms and then trying to tell people and teach them about that. I was like, oh, if I want to talk about like a fly agaric versus like a morel, I need to
Right.
understand what a basidio versus an asco, and then start trying to tell people or like teach classes or give lectures. I was like, oh, I need to actually learn this stuff, but I'm incredibly insecure about it too because I've never taken a myco class. Like everything I've
Yeah.
learned is just from sort of mainlining basically from social media and then like doing some Google searches. So I know, I get your feeling of like always feeling like there's so much more to learn because you haven't necessarily had that formal background, but
Dude, people
it's
are
fun.
hankering to learn. So you doing this little mini informal pre-podcast or whatever you want to say,
Whatever it
because I
is.
would love
What
it if you
hangouts?
actually did a podcast. If this was just wildly popular and you just had a podcast, because I think the more podcasts, the better. I'm like super into
Your
podcasts.
podcast, yeah, yeah,
I wish I knew more about like audio engineering and stuff because,
me too.
yeah, it's a
I get,
mountain to climb
yeah.
too. Because, yeah, I just already know because my ex-boyfriend was a music producer, and it's a lot goes
Yeah,
into like good
it seems
audio.
like it should be fairly simple, but once you start looking at it, there's complexities there that go deep. So I
Yeah.
guess I wanted to ask you, well, I've got you. I'm gonna call you an expert, whether or not you accept the term, but I think you're an expert, and
I
I
accept.
think you accept. Okay, good. You're an expert at taking visually stunning and informative and just some incredible photography and, like you said, working on footage and lots of things coming out. But you document East Coast mushroom diversity, and particularly down in Appalachia. And whenever I go live on TikTok or I hear questions from people, I get a lot of questions about, hey, I just like moved to Tennessee. What should I be looking for? And
Cool.
I can only give people fairly, like, oh, look for chanterelles and chicken in the woods and a fairly limited number of things, maybe that blue milk cap. But you've been there, you've experienced the biodiversity. Do you have sort of thoughts or feelings about the East Coast mushrooms in general in terms of biodiversity? And I'll follow up with other
Yes.
questions. But yeah, just speak to your thoughts on hunting on the East Coast
Yeah, so the
or
East
in
Coast
Appalachia.
is one of the most biodiverse areas in the country. You guys are like way behind us as far as I know it. And I've tried to get people to give an exact number of mushroom species or just even a guess. And even like,
Hmm.
like Tug or whoever, they don't want to give a guess.
I've heard something around 40,000, but that's like a
That's
very
See, that would be
fluid
way
number.
more than I even thought. I was thinking like 10. But that's still like a lot of mushroom species. I know like you guys don't have as on the West Coast, like the mushroom species are definitely different. There'll be species in the same genus and they'll look very similar.
Hmm.
But you guys will just have a different name because there's no way the spores could have made it over the Rocky Mountains,
Right.
basically. That's
But
why.
then within that, there's often like kind of a gradient or like a giant group. So like I'm thinking less and less that like there's true mushroom species and more just that there's like genre of mushrooms, whereas like distinct species are kind of, I
Oh
don't
my
know.
gosh. I know. I could probably talk for a whole like podcast or whatever about this because it is just so deep on like when you're out there every day and like it's like you just get into it, dude. You're like, what is this? Like, I've never seen this quite like this. And like you're just like determined sometimes to find it out. And a lot of people ask me like if you're really stuck on something, what book do you use or whatever. I'm like, if I'm really stuck on something, like so stuck that I don't even know a genus, I'm not gonna look in a book. I'm gonna post it on Facebook group, like if it's an Amanita in the Amanita group or the bully in the bully group. Like I know that like I mean I'm not really a mushroom identification expert. I'm really not. Like I do know a lot of mushrooms from sponging off Michael, but um and I could totally teach a class on it and I could totally call myself an expert, but the real experts are the people in their field, like Rod Tullis with the Amanita and Bill Yule with the bullies. Like
Right.
they're not I'm not gonna ask Bill Yule to identify an Amanita, you know? Like I'm gonna go to the person for who's known for the specific mushrooms. So I don't know, like, and then there's people that are just like savants, like Tug out there, who just know, oh my gosh, like so many,
Everything. Yeah, just
just like different variants of like different, like this var, this, and
mhm.
it's just a lot. Like, I don't tend to remember, like, my brother who died, he literally would remember the line from a movie, like, every word and like inflection like of every single thing and how it went. I can't do that. Like I will just
Mhm.
look it up. I'm fine with just looking it up. What I excel at is like creativity and like problem solving and
Mhm.
stuff like that. I'm not like I really need to know the name of every single mushroom in the universe. Like it's not really that important to me. It is when I'm like I don't know what this is, but
It's okay
um
to put things into those general categories because that's, we as
yeah.
human beings like to categorize things. And that's where, for me, I'm like, if I can at least get to the right kind of genus or family, I'm happy with that. I don't need to like bust my ass that I don't know the Latin species name because that stuff, it comes and goes. My dad has a friend who's an ichthyologist and he'd make a joke like every time he learned a new name, he'd forget the name of a fish.
and I sort of feel the same. It's like I've learned so many mushroom names now that if I learn a new one, I'm going to forget something else. So,
It's
can you broadly categorize things and keep moving without getting too hung up on like, especially because like all those names are changing too because of the DNA
I
stuff. So
know.
like I've heard some people who I'm sort of happy that I got into mushrooms in the last like 4 or 5 years, because if I'd gotten it into like 10 years ago and memorized all those names, I'd be pissed off because all those names
You
have
would.
changed by
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
So
and I mean even they're still changing. Like
they
they're
are.
totally still changing now. Like yeah, it's hard. I didn't know. I just you just aren't aware, I guess, of all the names. Like there's no way you possibly can be unless you're like just obsessed with that. But I just really, so what was the original question? What
Oh, I
about the
was just
mushroom species around
yeah,
here? Okay, so the
yeah.
mushroom species around here are amazing. Like this pocket of southern Appalachia. By the way, I got corrected within the first week of moving here. It's not Appalachia, is what I used to
Appalachia.
say. It's Appalachia.
Oops, I just showed my
Um,
Yankee hat there.
it's all right. I didn't know either. I didn't know either. But yeah, this pocket right here, by the way, we moved here, me and Michael moved here for the biodiversity of fungus. That's literally
Pretty
why
cool.
we live in this small little town
Mm.
in the middle of nowhere. It's a 300 person town, 2 hours about approximately west of Asheville. So there's a lot of mushroom heads in Asheville, but no
But
one
you're
wants
offset.
to
Yeah.
isolate themselves like we have to like really get into the biodiversity here. But I'm loving it. That was the big thing coming from Maryland. It was like so many people into it. There's so like fewer trails and like it's just so developed in
Mm.
Maryland now. It's crazy. They call it the DMV. The DC, Maryland, Virginia area is just so crazy right now with traffic. I sit in zero traffic in my life, so when I go back there, I'm like, wow, like it really is a culture shock. So I love it out here. I love it, love it, love it. And the mushroom species it is definitely one of like the top three reasons why. It's like the mushroom species, the non-existent traffic, and the people are
Mm.
like awesome. Like they're so nice, they're so kind. People hold the door for you. They just ask you how you're doing, but like they actually care how you're doing because they see you every day, like at the post office or whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like
That's
it's
good to
just
hear.
a
You've got a good
different
microphone
world.
or
Yeah.
different vibe out there. So I'm curious. Do you have I'm going to ask you favorite finds, but I'm going to try to
Uh-huh.
categorize them because again I know when people ask me like, "What's your favorite mushroom?" I'm like, again, I have like 30 answers that change daily for that question. So
I agree.
given this time of year and what's going on, what is your favorite sort of edible mushroom to find out in the
Well,
woods right now?
I have this is one of my favorite, but hedgehog
Ooh.
that I found
So
earlier.
that's a hydnellum, but that's so we have these little pinky ones that are kind of called like the belly button hedgehogs out here, but that looks a little darker, a little more robust. Is that like a hydnum rapandum or
I honestly, this is so funny
just a
because
hedgie?
I don't know because I don't really care, but I know that I can eat it. But if
That's
I was
good.
gonna post it on Instagram or something, I would like look it up, you know.
Yeah.
But
But
then I
I mean,
had
those hedgies are defined by the little teeth underneath, in case anyone
yes,
couldn't quite see it. So those are really great edibles, because there's nothing that toxic that looks like them. So you're very sure that if you found a hedgehog, it's going to be edible, and they've got great texture and flavor and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and the hedgehogs are actually related to chanterelles. So they're the same Canthorelaceae, I think, or
really,
some. No,
I
hold
didn't
on,
know that.
not
I mean,
Canthor.
that's
Yeah, 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 same family, Canthorelaceae.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
But they
Michael
just
told me that earlier
con
today. So,
diverged, in evolution, so that their spore dispersal strategies look very different, even though they're
they
from
look
like a
very different,
common
but
evolutionary ancestor.
it didn't go from gills. It went from ridges to
Ridges
teeth.
to teeth. That's okay. I can sort of see that. And I mean, it's nice too because I think of hedgehogs and chanterelles as a fairly similar mouthfeel when you cook them and eat them. If anything,
Yes.
hedgies are a little bit less wet and get a little bit more nutty. than a chanterelle, but they're
Yes.
both pretty meaty. And if you mix them with meat, it's like hard to tell the difference between eating them and a piece of chicken or something like that if you're eating a sort of a stir fry kind of thing.
Right. So here's another one. This is like a summer mushroom. Oops.
But that's one of my
Little
bucket list
cinnies.
mushrooms.
No, it's a cinnabar.
Yeah.
You
Well,
don't have these cinnabars?
I've never seen them. No, I haven't run into them. I've back on the
They're
East Coast. I've looked
everywhere.
for them. We don't have
They're
them in California. I
everywhere.
haven't seen red ones. I've around New England. I haven't seen them. I know they exist. I haven't bumped into them. So
That is
flavor wise
cool.
and texture wise, are they similar to like a golden chanterelle, or are they a little bit fruitier? Are they a little bit less
Um,
meaty? What are your thoughts on eating them?
I they're so small that we don't pick. I'll just pick them one or two when I have a basket of chanterelles and cook them together.
Hmm.
I rarely ever eat cinnabar chanterelles
On their
like
own.
separately on their own because they're pain in the butt to sit there and pick. They're this small, dude. So
Yeah, I
like,
hear you.
and that those were big ones. So I found one chanterelle today.
Nice.
It's a little beat up too.
Yeah, they start looking beat up pretty soon after you cut them. It's a shame because
And then
it's so funny how chanterelles go from like when they're on the forest floor, they're like glowing, and you're like, oh my God, how could I miss that? And then by the time you get it home, it's kind of dingy, and you're like, oh, that doesn't have the same like luminescence it had out in the woods, and
you're
I don't know
right.
why.
It's fireworks of the forest floor. Here's another one.
Ooh, that's
I don't know
the
if you can
green
see it.
cracking rustler. Yeah,
Yeah,
a little.
it's Russula crustosa. I think it's crustosa. But it kind of got, I mean, talk about getting beat up in a basket.
Yeah,
Russula are like the
yeah,
most brittle things on earth. And
yeah.
then another edible one, Sarcodon. You guys have
Oh,
Sarcodon?
nice. Yeah, the hawkswing.
Yeah.
We've got them. I mean, I think it's a different species, but I've that's one that I've never actually eaten. I've found it a bunch of times, but usually it's had so much like bug damage, or I've been finding enough other edible mushrooms that I haven't gotten around to eating it. But I hear they can be a little
Smells
bitter,
really
but
good.
they go really well in like robust tomato sauces and stuff like that because they've got really good
I
texture.
mean,
So,
if you're gonna pick one, you want to pick one that's not buggy,
yeah,
because the buggy ones are, blah. And then hold
it's
on,
good
what
advice.
else? I just got turkey tail just for
Nice.
Michael's extracts or whatever.
Hmm.
This is the weirdest thing. I don't even know. It's so funny this thing is making it on the Instagram live. I guess it's a chanterelle,
I
but
think
it's
that's a
just
chanterelle.
so
Yeah, it almost
weird.
looks like a club fungi though. It could be one of
Right?
those weird little club fungus things.
That's what I thought it was. And then here's a really, oh God, this looks like crap. But we found this really cool Amanita that I have no
Oh,
idea what it is, but it kind of fell
huh.
apart. But I'll post it on
On the
my
gram.
on the gram at some point. It had this cool like flocos like little
Oh, kind of like
stuff hanging
hairy
off
stuff
of
on the
it.
margins of the cap. Yeah. Are you
Yeah,
sure
and
it's an
then
amanita and not like a stropharia or
yeah, because
something
it
else?
had this bulb on
Oh,
the
okay.
bottom.
It came out of, yeah.
So I've never seen that before, and that's pretty much all we got. Just
Hmm.
that
So,
and some turkey tail, but it was really nice being out on a walk in the wet because it was just so dry here for like 2 weeks. It
yeah,
was it sucked, man. I hate that.
yeah.
Like when it stops raining for 2 weeks and then you go out in the woods and everything's like
Trust me,
dry and like
it stops
oh
raining for like 6 months here in California, and I'm just like, "Ugh, I need
yeah.
moisture."
Oh man, you
So,
guys are in the worst situation ever. Michael's friends had to evacuate their farm and stuff, and they showed a picture of the sky, and it was like literally 2:30 in the afternoon. It looked like nighttime. It was really scary. It's just
this
so scary. The
it has
fires.
been an experience, and fortunately I've been pretty lucky here in Napa, but like yeah, the West Coast is getting slammed. Oregon's in tough shape. So definitely, sending thoughts to everybody out here. But so
Well, the silver
what's your
lining, the silver lining
the
though.
silver lining is possibly morels in the spring, but you have to be at the right habitat. It's
Yes.
not just because you have burn areas doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be morels. It's got to be with like the fir and the pine and some of the conifers and stuff at
Right.
elevation. But I'm keeping an eye on those fires because I'm acutely aware. And last year was the first time that I actually like figured that out and went somewhere that was a burn site and then found morels. Took a
You
couple of
did
tries,
find
but
some?
I did.
Awesome.
It took me a while. I had a lot of unsuccessful trips until finally I had a friend be like, okay, here's like on the, elevation and temperature gradient and stuff, like try this, and that got me there. But
That's
what are
awesome.
some of things, since you forage, since you eat wild edible mushrooms, what are some of your favorite things to cook with them, make with them, ways to eat them?
This is another question I get asked all the time, but a lot of times you just cook them. So the main tip is always cook the water out first, and not a
Yes,
lot of people
definitely.
know. So the so back up. The main tip is always cook your mushrooms.
Yes, always cook them thoroughly. Definitely.
The second main tip is always cook the water out first. So you
Hmm.
put them on a pan, sweat them
Dry, like
out,
a
let
dry pan, do that dry
dry pan,
saute. Yeah.
dry saute, let the water all come out, and then all that's left is flavor country, basically, like just the flavor. And then you put butter. I always cook with butter. I'm not a vegan or anything.
I like
I,
butter.
I cook with butter. And then just like saute until they're golden brown. But I've made, what have I made recently? So we got a lot of black trumpets. So I made black trumpet cream sauce over
That's good.
salmon or something like that. Like trumpets and chanterelles are really good for fish or chicken, basically.
Hmm.
And what else? Well, those hedgehogs will go with anything. We got hedgehogs the other day, and I just sauteed them, like I said, and then put them on a salad, and that was really
That's
good.
nice. Yeah, kind of like
It,
a warm salad kind of thing.
it was it was just the mushrooms that were warm, so the rest of the salad was like
Oh, yeah.
carrots and lettuce, but it kind of like cooled it off, so it was like a regular salad, but it's so good because it let the flavor, that nutty flavor you're talking about, like
Mm-hmm.
shine because it was
Really
just a
shine.
salad. Yeah.
Hmm. So it was
Um,
kind of a plain background that really highlighted the umami of the
hmm
mushroom there. Yeah, I like doing that too, where you really instead of just using mushrooms always as an ingredient or component, like you're talking about, you kind of saute them fairly simply, but then pair them with something else that's kind of plain to really showcase how flavorful and like the textures of them and stuff. So
And
I'm
you do
curious.
a lot of
Yeah,
food. You're always cooking food on there and stuff. I
yeah.
wish that I like did that, but I literally cook dinner every single day of my life, and probably like every other day has mushrooms in it. So, but I'm just so lazy when I'm cooking dinner. I'm focused on the task of cooking dinner. I wish I could I need to
Well, you know what? If you ever have a pic, like send me a picture of the mushrooms you have on hand. Send me a picture of your fridge and be like, here's what I've got, and I'll be like, do this, try this out, kind
yeah,
of thing. Because that's how
yeah.
I don't cook because I'm planning out meals. I go to the fridge and I just pull out. It's like, what's going bad? I pull it all out and I kind of sit there and I like try a few different ideas out and like I'm just gonna start cooking and it'll evolve. Sometimes I start cooking. I don't know what I'm actually making until I actually put it on the plate finally because I'm just kind of changing the inputs. But
And
um,
that's why I have trouble like being like, yes, this is what I'm gonna make. But it would be awesome to do a cookbook at some point. I would love to do a cookbook because I am always cooking mushrooms. A lot of older ladies ask me
mm,
about a cookbook.
about your recipes. Yeah, I get a lot of requests for recipes too, but I don't use them. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get people to subscribe to my Patreon, which is for like $1 a month, just because I want to
Hmm,
feel motivated to write up recipes because it's a lot of work for me to sit down and write stuff up. But if people are expecting me to like
totally.
write a recipe a week, I'll be like, okay, I'll do it. And then maybe eventually I can slap that stuff together into a cookbook or something like that. But
That would be
um,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
People want that.
I try to make my Patreon as cheap as possible so that if people want to check it out, they can, but I'm not. uh,
It's honestly a great idea. I need more ideas like that. I'm gonna do a calendar this year,
that's a good, yeah,
actually.
definitely do calendar, do all that sort of stuff. But so I do want to ask you about some of your projects and future things. But before we move on, I do want to ask. So we're going from like summer into fall, and I
Hmm
asked you about edible mushrooms, but I want to ask you about two other categories, and one would be like your favorite aesthetic mushroom to find. Like what when you find like because there's mushrooms that I found and literally squealed like a little schoolgirl, just like
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna grab my macro lens and like be all up in this mushroom's business. And then also maybe your favorite kind of ecological mushroom, something that might not be like sexy looking, but learning about it has really influenced the way you think about, you know, the habitat and the environment kind of thing.
Yeah, so the favorite mushroom, not pretty one, but just like regular favorite, that one is going to be Cladomeris umbellata, which is also called Polyporus umbellatus, which
I
they
was
have
hoping
down
you'd
here.
mention that one. That's
Yeah,
that is one of my like top bucket list mushrooms. Those are so cool.
it's delicious. It helped me get through what I'm guessing was a urinary tract infection this year. But by the time I got to the doctor, I was completely negative for it. So say mushrooms are medicinal because I've literally, and it was so funny that day that I found that one, I was like, yes, this is awesome. And then I normally would keep it to like let Michael have it for his business, but he was like, ew, it has worms in it. And I was like, I eat my
Don't
Taki,
care.
so like, yeah, whatever. So I dried it out and
Oh,
grinded it
interesting.
up, and
Uh-huh.
then I really feel like it helped me. So I feel like it's a really awesome medicinal.
Hmm.
It's also delicious, even though we tend to not cook them. We tend to just dry them and save every single one that we find.
Hmm.
But also the reason that they're awesome is because they grow off of a sclerotium. So I've found it twice in 1 week in the same spot, like Wednesday and Saturday,
That's cool.
before. Yeah, isn't that cool? Because
Yeah.
it takes a long time to form too. And we have cultures of it going in the lab, and you should see it. I should have brought one out here. They're so cool looking. First of all, it's the slowest growing mushroom on culture I've ever seen. It was like 8 months ago or something, was put to plate and hasn't even edged out, which is like amazing. But if you put it on the same plate as honey mushroom mycelium or any like armillaria, it suddenly goes like insanely faster. So I think it actually uses the
So it
honey
can sense
mushroom.
and like quorum sense kind of thing.
I actually think it's like, I don't know if it's mycorrhizal, facultatively mycorrhizal, or literally anything about like the mechanism. But what we really think after growing on these plates is that it uses the honey mushroom mycelium to break down the actual wood in the environment, and then it like uses the energy from that honey mushroom mycelium to like fruit itself, like because
Oh
it
wow.
is an extremely slow growing mushroom,
Hmm.
but it's able to fruit like twice in 1 week. How is that? Like, so it has to form this
That's
a
crazy.
sclerotium, plural is sclerotia. A sclerotium is like an underground
Kind of
knob.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like
thick
a knob
almost
of fiber.
it's not a root, but it's a very thick bit like mushroom mat almost. Kind of, you
You
know, like
could
mushroom
liken it
armor
to a
or something.
rhizome. You could
Yeah, kind of like
liken
a
it to
mushroom
a
rhizome.
rhizome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so it's like just an underground, like little knob of hyphal tissue that, for some reason allows it to just, sorry, I have a mosquito. Got it.
Yeah, fending off. What was the
For
what's the common name of that mushroom again? Because the scientific name always
the,
goes in one.
yeah, umbrella polypore. It's because they changed
Umbrella
the name.
polypore. Yeah.
Yeah, they changed the name. It was Polyporus umbellatus, and then they changed it to Cladomeris umbellata. I don't know why.
Is it monotypic? Is it the only thing in its genus, or
No,
are there
I don't think
no?
so.
Okay.
But another really cool mushroom that I love finding that is monotypic is Globifomes graveolens. Have you ever found that?
No, but say that name again.
It's Globifomes um,
Globophomix.
graveolens. So
That's an awesome
it's
name.
yeah, so it's really just one species in the genus. And it's only found in like Europe and then on the East Coast. I've never found it down here. Um, we found it in Pennsylvania and Maryland, but I've never found down here. Another really cool mushroom that is only in Europe and a little section of Harford County, where I'm from, Harford County, Maryland, um, It's this mushroom. It's a polypore, Buglossoporus quercinus. It's a
Okay.
bright yellow polypore. It
Oh,
grows
cool.
on old decaying oak logs, and it's very rare. So, and it's not known. It's only known from like this one small little pocket, basically, which
Okay.
is really weird.
Would
Actually,
would you
I've
would you
heard
guess that
people.
it was like European settlers that brought it over on a tree incidentally, and maybe it got established in a little pocket there or something like that? Maybe.
Who knows? I have no idea. I literally have no idea. So that yeah, those are all like mushrooms that I'm like, wow, the outdoors is like really attacking me right now. Sorry, there's like a wasp and a bunch of
Yeah.
mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oops.
sorry. So yeah, I I love finding those. Another really cool one that I found this year, actually at the place that I was at this morning. Right, he's gone. Place I was at this morning, it's right in my town here. And it's just a little, it's like a 2 mile and a 5 mile trail. I found this really cool mushroom. Actually, my best friend Liz found the mushroom. Shout out to Liz. Um, it's called Anthracophyllum. It's
Ooh.
like it looks like almost like a seashell shape, but it's like, so it's on the back. It's like a orange. It almost looks like an orange cup, but or like
Huh.
something sticking off the log. But then you flip it over. Sorry, it was just on a stick. It was, I think it was like a blackberry bush stick, and it has these like beautiful bright red, like it looks like a shell formation. Like it
Hmm.
is so, it's so hard to describe, but it's so pretty. And they don't, there was no mushroom observer
Mm.
observations for anything above Florida. So it's
Wow.
a tropical species. I have no idea how it got here.
Well,
I
maybe it's a function of global warming too, and things getting a little bit warmer and the advancement of species northward kind of thing.
it could
Could
be,
be.
or just no one has
Has
seen
seen
it
it.
in this
Yeah.
area before.
Do you,
This other just really quick to add
yeah.
on to that, this other mushroom hunter around here, he's like the only one around here that we know of. He literally just gives us whole things of black trumpets and cauliflowers now, actually. But
Nice.
he because he's done for the year, so he just gives it all to us. So I
Oh,
was like,
gotcha.
wow. But he found the most northernmost southernmost observation of Amanita muscaria Gessawii, the our eastern fly agaric,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the yellow one. So
The kind of orangey yellow one. Yeah.
the orangey yellow, it's really yellow. It's like bright. It's like a bright yellow. Sometimes it gets a little orange in the center. I would we would find like hordes of those, and we were looking all last year when we were down here, and then we realized he was like, "Oh, I found the most, this most southern observation of that," and we were like, "Oh, we just figured it would grow down here because we're used to it from Pennsylvania and Maryland." But
Hmm.
it's really cool how right there at North Georgia it just cuts off. Like it, no one's ever found it for whatever reason below there. So
Hmm.
this is like the first guy that ever had found it. So stuff is happening
That's
all the
pretty
time.
cool.
Like that's the thing. Like with mushrooms, like anything can happen at any point. You can find anything that you just were not expecting at any point. And that's why I really want to, dude, I want to get into the DNA analysis.
Hmm.
Everyone's doing it, but
Hmm.
I've wanted to do it for a while. And it's a lot of consumables, lab
Yeah,
equipment.
there's investment and time and some, I think you have the scientific background for it, but yeah, it's not as simple as just knowing how to do it. You have to be able to acquire everything and have the resources to continue doing it and cataloging it and having
Exactly.
ability to send samples places. So you mentioned Mushroom Observer, and I guess touching on the idea of doing some sequencing and stuff, it has me thinking about citizen science. Do you use iNaturalist or do you use Mushroom Observer? And like, have you sort of keyed into doing citizen science and desire to like show phenology and potentially, get type sequences and send stuff in for DNA analysis and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I would. So I do use Mushroom Observer
Observer.
for
Okay.
only for stuff that's like wow, though, because it's
You're not
annoying
not
to
your
put.
everyday little brown lawn mushroom. You know.
Yeah, because it's annoying. You have to type out everything. Like they want to know the location, what trees are
Yes.
around, habitat, like blah blah blah. Like so, it's just a lot. Plus, you have to put just taking a picture from your phone, putting it on a computer, and blah blah blah, making sure it looks good and all that kind of stuff. It's like it can take a long time to get a
It
bunch of
does.
mushroom observer observations. So we're only doing it for ones that are
Kind of spectacular or
like
special.
really good ones. Yeah, at this point. But
Hmm.
I would love to just get paid or somehow get paid to do these to make databases and to have like our fungarium going and like be able to sit there and like be like, yes, these were all the trees that were around when we collected these mushrooms, and not just record it for everyone else, but record it for us and the data basically for every mushroom would be like amazing. That's the dream, but it's a full-time job getting all the data for all these mushrooms, putting them either in a computer or just like saving it, like writing it all handwritten and putting it in notebooks or whatever. Like no matter what way you slice it, it's a lot of work, but that is like if I can just stop having to make money from other people, like I
Hmm.
just like we're just trying to figure it out right now, like how can I have more time in my day to do like cool science stuff, because it is a damn shame to have a lot of, I want to do this. I'm motivated to do it, but I just don't have enough time in the day. Like
Yeah,
it,
and it's trying to figure out the path that you're going to take exactly because there's a lot of potential avenues, but it's hard to know like what's going to work and what's financially viable too. Because you're like I can think of a
yeah.
lot of things, but like I also need to figure out how to support myself. So you an idea if you haven't talked to Damon Teague, he's a guy who's done quite a bit of sequencing and he's got good advice about
Mhm.
some of the tiny like the mini PCR box type things that you can get. So if you want to like talk to somebody about how to get into some initial sequencing stuff, he'd be a great person to
Cool.
chat with. And another thing is I'm on the SOMA board. SOMA is our local mycology society, and they give
Okay.
out grants every year. And I know that you are an
Cool.
experienced grant writer. So maybe next
Yeah.
year we can get you into the pool of applicants. And if you write up something about a desire to sequence mushrooms, your local things you're finding in your fungarium or around Appalachia.
That would be
Did I say that
awesome.
right? No, Appalachia, Appalachia,
Appalachia.
Appalachia. Um,
Yeah.
Sorry, it was like when I went to Oregon for the first time, and it's the Willamette Valley, not the Willamette Valley. It's just
Yes.
little things all over the place, you
Oh, I
know.
know. I just want, I'm a stickler because I am a writer and editor. I will, I can't let it go. I have to tell you. I
Yeah,
have to tell you the right way. I have to keep you on point.
on
Like,
point.
I
Well,
feel like
so
it's my job.
speaking of which of being on point, we're gonna run out of time here in a second. But
Okay.
I know that you have, you at least sell some kits. So thinking about like citizen science, you guys supply some little mushroom ID reagents and stuff. Do you want to speak to that and any other projects you might have kind of on the back burner and you know?
Sure. So the reagents for mushroom identification are available on mushroomlife.com.
Okay.
And that is my thing. Like I make those for people. And everyone asks, every single person asks, where is the guide? Like where is the guide to using these? Like where do you, look up all these reactions? And I'm like, well, I've just made them available for sale for relatively cheap. It's like $25 for all three. And then it's
Hmm.
usually less than $30 like total for shipping and everything.
Hmm.
But that's the reason they're cheap is because they don't like really come with instructions. I would love it if, I mean, one ultimate goal would be to get that database of reactions, which
Hmm.
mushrooms react like with which reagents. And like I just don't, there's not
Hmm.
enough people using them really, first of all, to have like a full consensus in the whole
Hmm.
community about stuff. But there is
Right.
some data that Michael Kuo has on his
Yeah, I was
Mushroom
gonna say
Expert
Michael Quo is
website.
pretty good. He usually has like a few of the reaction types on there, so
Right. So
that's what
he
I
might say
reference.
like exactly. So he'll on Mushroom Expert. But the thing is, you have to know what mushroom you probably have.
Yeah,
So that's the clincher. So if you're like, oh, I have this,
chicken and the egg kind of problem sometimes.
yeah. So it's like, oh, say you have an agaricus, like, and you could drop KOH on it, and you could know that you can't eat it. It's toxic. Well, that's awesome. But like, if you don't know what an agaricus is, and you don't know, like, how to look that up, it's a challenge. It's an obstacle that the community needs to overcome together. And if we can just I would love to, yeah, like have more time and to make that database of reactions and to get people on a consensus about what, you know, because Michael Kuo writes it down, like there could be different reactions that other people have. Like you just never know. I'd love to get like, well, 4 out of 5 times this bolete turns orange, but like the fifth time it turned green or whatever. But then it's like you have to also like, are you identifying it correctly? So it is a big chicken and the egg scenario. So it's like, if are you identifying it correctly in the first place to be able to narrow it down, like with the
Yeah,
reagents? So
yeah, I
I don't
gotcha.
know. It's so yeah, that I'm doing the calendar. I'm starting a business with my friend Liz. It's going to be mushroom related goods. That is all I can say for right now.
Cool.
We want to probably come out with that like hopefully next year. We're thinking before Christmas, but we'll see. I'm definitely going to have the calendar before
Keep your
Christmas.
eyes open, guys. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
thing. Calendars are good.
And then just like more interesting, like like my taki's coming up. I'm gonna be like foraging for my taki. And then once I'm trying to sell this house that I still own in Philly, so once I end up moving, I'm gonna buy a house down here. And then once I buy the house, we're gonna start having like more classes and events, actually at the house. And then next summer, had to cancel. I was so sad to cancel the Rainforest Hideaway Mycology Convergence, which I started planning, and then COVID hit and it just took it out completely. So there's this awesome little place down here that we really want to have. It's in the National Forest, and I have everyone on board already to be able to have it there. It just has to be
Yeah, okay
open
to have. Yeah,
at the time
yeah. Jeez. Well,
because all that.
whenever that becomes a reality, let me know because I would absolutely love to come down to Appalachia and get a chance to
Yeah.
explore some of the mushroom biodiversity. But I want to
I'd
say
love to
thank
have a
you. Yeah,
podcaster or a fake podcaster of
yeah,
any
yeah.
sort just to like document the event. So I am very interested in having you out as well. So
Sure.
just keep in touch. I'm probably gonna be starting to plan it again in January. So
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and it's been really cool.
yeah.
You are definitely one of my sort of like mushroom heroes that I look up to and see your photos and just live
Aw.
vicariously through your experiences. So, it's been great to meet you, Mandie, and I wish you luck.
Yeah,
Lots of
and
good stuff, and
thanks
I
to
hope the
all of
maitake
your
start popping soon.
me too. And thank you to all of your followers who are clearly awesome and you just have so many of them, and that's just awesome. I love seeing a mushroom account with so many followers. It's awesome. Like, so hi to all your followers. And yeah, hope maybe we can one day, maybe you can follow me too.
Yeah, definitely check her out. She's a great account. But yeah, Mandie, thanks again. It's been fun.
Okay, thank you so
Hope you
much.
have a
We'll
good
talk to you
one.
later.
Bye.
Bye.